Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and to today's video. Now today I wanted to talk about if Western arbitrage in Thailand no longer exists. Now before I get into it, I want to talk about what does Western arbitrage mean. That means you come from the West and the amount of money that you have in the West goes a lot further in Thailand. Also, before I get into it, ask you guys to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm trying to get this channel to 1,000 subs, so yeah, I really appreciate it if you could do that. Now, to me, there is no right or wrong answer to the question about if Western arbitrage still exists, because in some ways it does, but in many ways it doesn't. And I personally think it's going to depend who you ask, whether they think that it exists or it no longer exists, depending on when they first arrived in Thailand. If you arrived in Thailand in the past couple of years, you're going to think that, yeah, the Western arbitrage still does exist to some level, and you're going to be pretty happy about things. If you arrived in Thailand 20 years ago, you're going to say that Western arbitrage has completely gone, it doesn't exist anymore, and what on earth are you talking about if you say that it's still available? So that would be my personal take on that, because from, the original time when I personally arrived in Thailand, there was a huge difference in pricing. Like completely, if you hadn't witnessed it or experienced it, it's very hard to believe. So that's why I think it's quite hard with the amount of people moving to Thailand now saying that how much further their money goes, etc., etc. It's hard to sort of see that and think you have no idea. You have no idea what it was actually like 20 years ago. That was to the point where £600, you're going out every single night in central Bangkok, with cheap beers and having an awesome time for basically next to nothing. You can't do that anymore. While you can still exist on less money in Thailand than you can in places like England, it doesn't mean that for this tiny amount of money you can all of a sudden live a different lifestyle and do all these amazing and wonderful things that have opened up because you've made the move. And that's the big difference that many people don't tend to consider. Now, of course, I've made quite a few videos on the channel. I think we had one yesterday talking about Thailand being cheap. It's quite a popular topic, and I like to touch on it from the perspective of someone who's been in Thailand for a long time and who's watched the gap between the West and Thailand ebb away ever so slowly over time. Now I think, let's just say there's no actual scale on this at all, so please bear that in mind. But let's say I think it used to be like this, right at the bottom, right at the top. And I think we're about here at the moment, West and Thailand. There's still this small gap that people are playing with, small gap that people are talking about. But I can honestly see it over the next 10 to 20 years. That's just my personal take, because I didn't even consider or never even thought that it was possible for such huge change to happen in the time I've been here. And obviously you cannot have your time again, you can't have a go again, you can't go for round two. But would any of you guys who are moving to Thailand now, or you've been in Thailand for 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, or whatever, would you, if your intention is to stay in Thailand forever, long term, if you knew in 20 years time that what makes your life possible in Thailand now will completely disappear and be changed with something very different, would you still commit to living in Thailand? Now that's a question that I find is quite interesting, because if I could go back in 20 years ago and I would be asked the question, everything that you find amazing about Thailand, everything that you find fantastic, is slowly going to be eroded away and it's going to change into something different. Would you still make the move? Now that's a question that I can't answer honestly. 50% of the time, yeah, of course, I love Thailand. I mean, I really do. I really love living in Thailand. It's fantastic. Very fortunate to live here, and I wouldn't change that for the world. But on the other hand, would I have sacrificed other opportunities that would have been perhaps available to me in life if I'd have known that the reason I came to Thailand would no longer exist, or at least no longer exist in the form that it existed when I made the move? That's a very difficult question to ask, and one that I often spend quite a bit of time pontificating about and thinking, well, where would I be now if I'd have known, or if I had the inkling that such huge change could happen? I always thought that, you know, the West would be a cut above or, you know, one step ahead. But I was wrong. I made a huge error of judgment, and I suppose I can only blame myself in that aspect. But the Western arbitrage that we saw 20 years ago now is a small fraction of what it used to be. But people still come and are taking advantage of it. They're taking advantage of this ever-decreasing gap between countries. I mean, look at rent prices in Bangkok, for example. I'm seeing videos of people saying they're spending 20,000 baht a month for a small studio condo, not even, you know, in the main thick of it area. And, you know, 5 years ago, that condo was 8,000 baht for something like in On Nut, for example, a small studio. Now it's nearly doubled in price. But people are still saying, oh, it's cheaper than England. Well, yes, it is, but it's not to the point where, is it worth giving up everything to save 20%? Before it was, is it worth giving up everything to save 80%? And I think that's the thing that many people don't consider when thinking about Thailand and what can happen in a relatively short amount of time on the big scale of things. And the reason I'm talking about this is because for a number of years, for a lot of time, I was living out in the Chiang Mai countryside, and I was struggling with, you know, the pace of change in Thailand. I'd committed to something that I thought would, in essence, remain somewhat similar. I knew I expected some kind of change. I expected things to, you know, alter from time to time. Of course you do. You don't expect things to remain identical. But I was struggling for a number of years on the understanding that this change that is happening in front of my very eyes is taking away everything that I sacrificed lots of other things for. Now, over the past 2 years, I'm in a far, far better place, living in Chiang Mai City, doing quite well with a lot of different things, really happy with how things are going. It's fantastic. But many expats that I know, and I was one of them included a while ago, are struggling with, you know, decisions that they made earlier on in their lives based on a false understanding of, you know, how the world works, or a false understanding of, you know, what matters to different people in different walks of life. And I think that's why I wanted to sort of, you know, make this video, make more of it, is not to discourage people to move to Thailand, because Thailand is fantastic. It's an amazing place. I love living here, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But people are, you know, making huge life-changing decisions based on information that perhaps is only a few years old. A few years old information. People who are making these videos are still in the early stages of their Thailand adventure. Perhaps there's some people making videos who have been here for a month, talking about, you know, things such as the best place in Bangkok for this, or the cheapest thing in Bangkok for that. Yet they don't have the years of experience to see just how quickly Thailand can move away from how they found it. And I think it's important to talk about these things because not many people are talking about it. And you, of course, are going to get the people who say, well, you make more money. It's not about that. Or you're going to be people saying, of course, places change, just get over with it. But as we can see, you know, YouTube is, you know, a great place for seeing what's going on. There are so many people moving to Thailand now who I personally believe are moving under false pretenses. They're moving under false ideas of what the country actually is, because it's been based on how it used to be. They're making decisions on how it used to be because people still think it's like that, because they didn't actually experience what it used to be like. Now, of course, 20 years before I arrived, Thailand was even more different. And I've heard stories about how it used to be. And I'm sort of the type of person that would love nothing more than to go back in time and experience, you know, Bangkok in the 70s or 80s. That would be a dream come true, but not quite possible, unfortunately. But if the people who, you know, around that time who I've spoken to, and I've spoken to so many over the years in Thailand, how they described it was sensible, normal change from 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Normal change, just normal progression, moving on in a normal direction whereby if you land in here, you're going to sort of be carried up along with you. You found yourself in Thailand, you're going to be carried along with you in the same direction. But if you arrived sort of, I would say after 2008 was the main when the financial crisis happened in the West and things changed considerably. If you arrived in Thailand in say 2010, you're moving in the same direction, but Thailand is going up. Hang on, I'm trying to do that better. Before 2010, yeah, Thailand's moving as you'd expect, and you arrive and you can sort of continue with Thailand in the right direction. You arrive in 2010, but Thailand continues to go up. You're moving in the same pace. You're moving at the same pace, but Thailand is exceeding everything that you could potentially achieve because it's outpacing anything you can do. Unless you're a landowner in central Bangkok or central Chiang Mai, even maybe not even central Chiang Mai, but a landowner in central Bangkok, or got in at the right moment at certain places, you haven't been able to keep up with the pace of development in Thailand. You arrive in 2006 getting 40,000 a month, and by the time, you might be on over 100,000 a month now, but 40,000 baht a month in 2006, you could have 5 times a better amount of time on that amount of money that you can on 100,000 baht now. And of course, things change. As we know in the West, prices go up, inflation happens. But I would argue that, at least from a Western perspective, Thailand has overpriced over the years the West as opposed to how the West has done. Now that's my personal take. That's taking into consideration if you're using Western currency in Thailand, because you need to exchange it to baht, and the baht's got a lot stronger. So when we're talking about Western arbitrage, does it still exist? To a point, it does. But does it exist to a level where, dreams are made or things can happen out of the blue just because you made the move? No, it doesn't happen like that anymore, whereas before it used to do. And I think, I like this type of topic. I want to talk about, more about, the affordability of Thailand and how things change on this channel moving forwards, because I think many people are getting unstuck at the moment, and I've witnessed it. Probably over the last month, I've seen 4 channels saying, I left Thailand, it didn't work for me, it wasn't like I was expecting, it wasn't like people told me. And it is because, there are people who are touching down in the country with no experience, talking about how to live on $1,000 a month. And they're so bubbly and happy and content with what they're doing because they've just arrived and it's novel and it's different and it's something unique. Failing to consider that, can you do that for the next 10 years? And the answer would be no. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments as well. Always like to get your take on the comments, read every single one of them. Even the comments that are quite negative, always welcome, keep them coming. And if you guys could subscribe to the channel as well, I'd really appreciate that. As I said, I'm trying to get to the 1,000 sub mark. And yeah, catch you in the next video. Cheers guys, and bye for now.